Hello and welcome. I am your host of What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? Author Karen E. Osborne. I have five novels out. The latest is Justice for Emerson. I am so glad that you're here. This is a space for readers and writers to come together and talk about books. So I am so glad you guys are here to hear about a very exciting book and to meet my wonderful guest, Bob Rothman. Hey, Bob.
Hey Karen, how are you doing?
I am great, and I'm so glad that you're here today. Bob is the author. The book he wants to tell you about today is The Shark's Protege. And this is an exciting book, and today is publication day. Congratulations, Bob.
It,
That I know that's just always such a big moment, no matter how many books you've published, right?
Absolutely, it's very exciting.
It is, it is. So let's start with the premise and the setting of the shark's protege, because it's a little different. So tell everybody about it.
Well, the setting is a small town in northwest Georgia, up towards the mountains, and the story is about a young man by the name of Bud Boyer who uh, somehow manages to find himself without a job after he graduates from high school. Uh, but he, as circumstances would have it, is leaving a tavern in this small town one night when he's accosted by two young men with knives. He quickly knocks them out. Knives drop to the ground. Well, the owner of the tavern, who goes by the nickname Moogie, uh, observes this and decides he might want to hire this young man because Moogie, besides owning the tavern, is the local loan shark. He makes high
Mm.
interest loans to people who can't borrow money anywhere else. And he needs somebody to help collect loans from recalcitrant borrowers. And so he hires Bud, and Bud accepts the job, and he quickly makes a name for himself by uh, delivering swift and hard messages to borrowers who haven't paid up on time, and collects the money, which the shark loves, and he keeps them employed and uses him for that purpose until, by a twist of fate, uh, Bud happens to fall in love with a young woman who is the daughter of the town police chief.
Uh-oh.
And at that point, Moogie decides it's probably not a good idea for Bud to be working with him anymore. And so they have a parting of the ways, sort of. But as the book goes on to show you, they don't really part ways. They remain tied together in a lot of ways that eventually leads them into court, which is what I write about since I'm a retired lawyer.
Yeah. And leads them into court, and there's a murder, right? There's a murder
Yes,
mystery that's part of this story. So
yes.
you, so how do you, what's the genre that you would call it? I mean, is it a thriller? Is it a legal thriller? What do you call it?
I call it a crime slash legal thriller. The first
Fine.
half of the book is crime, the second half is the legal part of it. And I actually go through a pre-trial and full trial, a jury trial, and show how that process works.
And that's what you did for a living, right? For
It
years.
is. I was a trial lawyer for almost 40 years with an Atlanta law firm. When I retired, well, actually, let me back up. When I told my wife that I was ready to retire, her response immediately was, "Well, you can retire when you know what your next job's going to be." And we'd been married almost 50 years. She had the right to say that. And so I said, "I do. I know what I'm going to be. I'm going to write novels." And she said, "Okay, fine." Snicker, and she didn't snicker. She was supportive, and but I did. I sat down and wrote my first book, which was published about 18 months ago, and now the second one's about to come out.
Pretty impressive. You and I have a lot in common. My first book didn't come out till I was 69. And now I'm 78. And number 6 is coming out. This is our retirement life. This is what retirement looks like, and it's cool beans.
Yes, it's very cool. And I guess as you go through life, you see all kinds of people and hear all kinds of stories. And if you have a ability to write and an interest in writing, that's great grist for the mill.
It is. So tell me, so Bud and Moogie are such interesting characters because they're both on the criminal side of life. Um, so is it hard to write a sympathetic character, a character that you want your readers to root for when, they're doing bad things? Tell
Yeah,
us about them.
it is a little bit of a challenge. Moogie more than Bud, although I think my observation from having seen all kinds of people over the course of my legal career is that most people aren't all one way or the other. People tend to have different strengths and different weaknesses and different mixtures of those. And sometimes it just takes circumstances to bring out the good or the bad, depending on what's going on in the person's life. And some well, we've all seen people who have been celebrities that suddenly have a dark side to them, unfortunately, and that happens in real life. And so, why can't it happen in fiction? And my goal was to create characters who would be interesting, who had some complexity to them, uh, relationships that have complexity to them. The fact that Bud is befriended and employed by Moogie and then falls in love with the daughter of the police chief makes for a different kind of a triangle, and uh, it provides the basis for what causes the two to come apart and eventually to come back together when Moogie is charged with murder and Bud is called upon to testify for him in court. It's a
Yeah.
And so we have a trial at the end. Bud testifies, and not only that, his father-in-law, the police chief, testifies, and so it's a
It's
unusual.
complicated.
It is complicated, but it all fits together nicely, and I hope readers like it. I'm pleased with the story myself.
Yeah, yeah. So you mentioned that you were a former trial attorney, but weren't you also a journalist at one point?
Yes, that's true. I started as a newspaper reporter. I worked for two different newspapers in a 6-year career when I decided I wanted to go to law school. And part of that was I was part of a number of years I was in Tallahassee, Florida, covering the state capitol. I got to know a good number of lawyers, and a few of them encouraged me to think about law school. And so I
Hmm.
let that kind of sift through my brain for a while, and eventually, I enjoyed journalism, but the reality is it's pretty tough to make a very good living at it, especially in those days. And at some point, it wasn't quite as challenging as it was, and really felt like I wanted to do something that would be more challenging. And
Yeah, and
so,
that would that keep that was more interesting to you. Does your journalism, you told us how your law life threads through your books, but do you draw on that experience as a journalist at all in your current writing?
there are some elements of news coverage, and actually, I'm now working on a third book where that's going to become even more important.
So, hey, that sounds good. Um, so, uh, things, especially, those of us that are a little bit older, we pretty much know who we are. We pretty much know, what we're good at and what we're not. But I find that the process of writing and spending my life with characters and spending my life with people that, all these interesting people that live in my head, I learn interesting things about myself, things that I didn't know or things that I forgot. Did you learn anything about yourself when you really started writing full time? Did you discover anything about you?
But I really, my writing had not been on the creative side. It had been as a lawyer, as a journalist. In both of those cases, people are feeding facts to you, And on the law side, of course, you're also doing legal research, but you're telling stories based on facts that other people give you. What I didn't know when I started to write novels, I felt like I could write, but I didn't know whether I had enough of a creative spark to come up with a storyline that could sustain a novel. And I'll tell you something, when I, on both of the books that have been published, when I started writing, I had no idea where the books were going. I didn't have an outline or a thought about beyond the first chapter of where it would go. I let the story take me where it seems to want to go. I build the characters as I go based on how the story's going. And, you know, at some point it gels into a more cohesive thought, and I get a better idea as I'm moving along where I want to head with the book. But I don't always know what the ending's going to be. Even that uh, comes about as I'm writing. And, you know, on the first book in particular, I had an ending and I decided I didn't care for it. And so I went back and tried again. And then I was happy with how it ended. So it's very much a creative process from start to finish.
It's so interesting. You know, there are people who outline carefully. My son is a writer, and you know, he's an outliner, and
Yeah.
he's, you know, he plots things out. And then I was just interviewing a fantastic, very fascinating man, and he was telling me that he just comes up with a blurb of the book and the cover,
Oh,
and then he starts writing. So everybody's a little different, right? Everybody has a different approach. I'm like you. I just start, you know, and the characters take me where they're going to take me, and I have no idea how the book's going to end. You know, it's yes, I'm like you. So, you said you're working on something new now. Can you
yeah.
give us a little hint about the new book?
Well, it's in a pretty early stage, so there's not a lot to tell just yet. It it is starting in the same town again. I feel like I know this town. I feel like I've been there, and but it's involving different characters. It's going to be another legal thriller if it keeps going the way it's going, but uh, it's involving um, some money laundering, I guess is the best way to put it.
Hmm.
There's money laundering going on, and there's an interesting history about where the money that is being laundered came from, which dates back to uh, a couple of generations to when gold was discovered up in North Georgia. So,
Intriguing.
yes.
Sounds
And the other
intriguing.
thing I'll tell you about the book is it's combining my journalism experience. A big, a big part of it is going to be based on a major character is going to be the owner and publisher of a local newspaper.
Cool. We will look forward to that. But first, we have to buy this one. So we need to buy this one and write reviews. And but this is what are you reading? What are you writing? So was there an author who had a big influence on the style of your writing or the type of writing that you do?
You know, I love Grisham. I also like Scott Turow. So legal thrillers obviously are playing into this. But I like a lot of different authors. I like Carl Hyacin and his wonderful sense of humor. And as a footnote, Carl Hyacin and I went to college together as undergrads. We have not stayed in touch, but I could just every time I see one of Carl's books come out, I laugh because I know it's going to be filled with very dry humor and the kind of thing I like to read. So I do read
You've
his
written
books.
him. I hope you've written him and told him that you're an author now.
I did, yes.
Oh, good. Good. And is there anything that you've read recently that you can recommend to our audience?
You know, you did tell me you were going to ask this, and I'm afraid I didn't prepare to answer that question. Um, I'm going to look at my cheat and look at my bookshelf while we're
Yeah, take a look.
talking. Well, I did read Undaunted Courage not too long ago. The
Say that
Stephen
again.
Ambrose Undaunted Courage.
Mhm.
by Stephen Ambrose, which is a wonderful story. Um, Also, oh, I know, All the Light We Cannot See,
Ah,
a fabulous book.
that's a fabulous book. Yes,
Yes.
indeed. Well, thank you, Bob. This has been so good. You will know that you can find Bob's books on Amazon, in your local library, Barnes and Noble, your independent bookstore. And if when you go there you don't see it, in the stores, just ask for it in the library because they will get it for you. But Bob, where can they be in touch with you?
Well, my website is bobrothmanauthor.com, and my email address is bob@bobrothmanauthor.com. And that's the best way to reach me. And I always make a point of responding to emails that I get. So I hope people who have questions or want to know more will reach out.
Excellent. And when you do, I want you to make sure you tell Bob that you read his book, that you're writing, that remember the book is The Shark's Protege, that you read it, you loved it, and that you've written a review because that makes all the difference. And until next week, have a great, great week. And I hope I'll see you. And what are you reading? What are you writing? Bye, everybody.